Good news and bad news. Good news is I finished Throne of Glass. Bad news is I got Chick-fil-A sauce on Throne of Glass. I wanted to document my experience reading the series for you guys because I know there are so many people very passionate about the series, my best friends included. But I did read this first book 2 years ago. Miraculously, I've somehow managed to avoid spoilers for the series. I really don't know anything that happens with these characters. The only thing I've seen are a couple names pop up that I don't recognize from this book, but I don't know anything about when they show up or who they are. As I said, I have read this book before, and I do think I'm going to keep my rating at about a 4 star. As with most Sarah J. Maas books that I've read so far, this really ramps up at the end and starts getting interesting, but I did feel like I was pretty bored for most of this book. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's pretty typical for a first book in a series, especially a long series like this one, when we're setting up the world and the characters, getting to know everyone. I did pick up on a lot more foreshadowing this time around that I'm cautiously optimistic about. A couple things I noticed, skip this part if you don't want spoilers, were the green lights in the castle and the king's fireplace. I don't know why I'm still holding this book. One sec. There was a part near the end where Selene is talking about a dream and she mentions a featureless young woman with golden hair and a crown far too heavy for her to bear. Elena mentioning blood ties and all that stuff about how she could be great if she just learns to accept herself. And then finally, the wind beating on the windows at the end when she's getting upset about how the king was threatening to unalive all of her friends. I don't know, I feel like there could be something there. I did recently learn that she was 16 when she wrote this, and that's crazy impressive, just taking into account the potential foreshadowing alone. The most interesting character by far, in my opinion, is Nehemia, and I hope we get to see a lot more about her backstory and her magic in the rest of the series. And Fleetfoot, I hope that he plays an important role as well. As for the love triangle situation in this book, I don't really have feelings very strongly either way at this point. I do think that we have been getting some inner dialogue talking about how Dorian seems to not be afraid to see Selena as she is, whereas Kale seems to be starting to like her in spite of who she is. So that's raising my red flags. However, I will say if Dorian is going to be a potential love interest that I think we're all going to want to root for, I do think he has a long way to go, or to grow, I guess, to become a more interesting character. But I do think the signs that he's going to be a good person are there this early on. Anyway, I'm excited to continue the series this time around, and I'm also excited to look back on this video after finishing the series and kind of see where my thoughts were at this point. Hopefully it's not another Tamlin situation. But yeah, I will be trying to vlog my experience with Crown of Midnight, which I'll be starting tonight, hopefully. Stay tuned.